I intend to stay mostly focused on RF and type projects and electronics repair type things on this channel, but I do work as a SCADA systems developer doing a lot of computer programming type stuff. So people that do stuff with the Arduino, I mean, we're kind of kindred souls, and I absolutely love these devices. And the Arduino really did change my life. I actually got one of these from my brother-in-law. I was a blue collar worker in the oil fields. It's basically swinging a sledgehammer and cranking a pipe wrench every day. And my brother-in-law, I had been wanting to learn computer programming and kind of dabbled a little with JavaScript. And this was in 2011. My brother-in-law had left one of these at my house around the holidays, and when he went to leave, I said, "Hey, you left your Arduino," and he said, "Keep it and learn how to use it." And so this little guy, or one like it, really started me on my journey to learn more about electronics, hardware, and computer programming. And fast forward to 2018, I had went from being a blue collar worker to working full time as a SCADA systems developer. These little devices they're pretty powerful, and that's an understatement for me because getting one of these in my hand and learning how to use it and unlocking some of its secrets, it really I had no idea that I was going to go to work in SCADA or that I could ever get a job doing this tech stuff. But it laid down all the principles and the theories and all the basic electronics 101 and understanding of hardware, and it kind of got me off of the starting gate when it came to computer programming, which I sort of found out is really kind of my passion. So I just think the world of these devices. But I want to kind of go over what the differences are in a few different Arduino types, because I know there's a lot of people that they're wanting to get into these, and they're a little confused because there's several different types of them, and you might not know really which one to get or why to pick one over the other. And so I thought I would make the kind of video that I kind of wish maybe was around when I started, or that I hope will help people to understand it better. So this is your basic Arduino Uno. All the ones that you would see now would be the R3, I believe. It uses an Atmega 328P microprocessor, and it's got six, I believe it's, yeah, six analog to digital pins, because there's an analog to digital converter, and that's the number of analog pins is somewhat important because you can use an analog pin as a digital, but you can't use a digital pin as an analog. So if you want an analog input, you've got to have one of these analog pins. Are the only ones that can perform that functionality. They can turn a sine wave into ones and zeros, is the short way of explaining that. So you might be mindful of how many analog pins are on the board if you think you're going to use a lot of analog inputs in your project. But this is kind of it's kind of like the Jack and Coke of Arduinos. I mean, it's pretty common. It's not super fancy. It'll do everything you need it to do and a whole lot of stuff you probably don't need it to do. And the price is pretty good on these. I think they're I just looked earlier on eBay, and I think when you order them in multiples of 3 or 5, I think they're about $6. The the physical size of them is, it's a little bit big. That's kind of my complaint. And they have this USB. Oh man, I forget which one that's called. Is that an F or, well, I forget which USB connector that is called, but it's not as common as the micro USB or USB-C. Not that that's a huge deal, but this is kind of like the same cable that printers at least used to have. But everything else about them is just, it's pretty standard. I mean, all the other pins are, they can be used as digitals. There's so many pins, I forget which ones that can be used for pulse width modulation. So that's something to think about if you're wanting to do a lot of pulse width modulation. Usually when you buy these, they'll the cheaper ones will come with the female pin headers on, but not the male headers. But a lot of times it'll come with the male headers, but they won't be soldered on. If you buy one of the actual Uno, the real deal, real McCoy ones, which I have one of those as well, because I mean, I like to support their project, and so I think buying one official one at least is a really good idea. It's a way to kind of give back. But they'll have the male and female pin headers soldered on, so that makes them a little bit more versatile. I personally don't care if it comes with the headers soldered on, and I honestly think that if that's a really big worry to you, this might be a good time to kind of get your head in the right spot. And soldering pin headers on at one time would have been kind of a daunting task for me. And I kind of look back now and laugh a little bit because I could solder these on in just a quick minute. So it's good. If nothing else, it's good soldering practice. I understand you might be worried you're going to screw up a $6 Arduino, but soldering pin headers on is a pretty basic thing that you kind of need to learn if you're going to do some electronic stuff. These also have the power connector so that you can connect them from like a barrel jack if you wanted to do that. Not sure I've ever actually powered one on that way. But this isn't really my favorite Arduino. And rather than giving you that spill that a lot of people will give, like, well, whichever one is going to work for you, like it all depends on you and your personal I'm actually going to just tell you which one that I like the best if you're willing to stick around for a minute. But I wanted to show you a real world project. So I used this Arduino. I 3D printed this in pieces. This is a wind simulator for my sim racing rig. And if you look down in here, you'll see these. It's been dismantled, but you'll see those standoffs. And the Arduino actually screws down to that. And then this motor driver board hat, or whatever, I forget what they call, shield, actually plugs into the top of it. And all it does is basically just power these fans. And from there, there's hoses. They're connected to these, and that would blow air. The faster my car would go in the video game, the faster the fans would turn. And I ended up, I didn't like how this worked, so I kind of redid it. But I just wanted to show you an example of kind of how you can use how an Arduino can get used in like a real project that you can kind of use on a daily basis. I use this thing every day. On a semi-daily basis for over a year, or maybe it was a year and a half, 2 years. And I think the power supply burned up, but it might have been the motor driver board. I never really did take the time to actually figure out what went wrong with it. But other than their physical size, they're okay. But so moving on. So So this is the Arduino Nano, and it's basically the same thing as the Arduino Uno, believe it or not, but it's just smaller. And it's got the Atmega 328p. You've got a mini, or is that a micro USB port? And they almost, unless you pay extra money, they do not come with pin headers, which I actually consider that to be a positive. I don't really want them to come with pin headers because I kind of like to choose whether I'm going to put male or female or which direction I want the headers to go. And I'll explain why that's important here a little bit more in just a second. So I like them to come just bare like this, and they're really cheap. I looked at the price earlier, and buying them in like lots of 3 or 5, I think they're about $4 a piece from China, maybe even as low as 3 if you really shop around. So they're out of the 3 types that I'm going to show you, these are the cheapest. And again, it's really, just think of these two as kind of the easiest way to understand is these two are really just, they're basically the same thing. This one's just smaller. Uno, Nano. Now the Nano actually has something that this one doesn't have, and that is, let me see. I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera, but to my memory, I believe this one has 8 analog inputs, whereas this one has 6. But I think the number of digitals are basically the same. I think it would be 14. I don't remember exactly. But essentially, again, they're the same. This one's just smaller. There's no difference in functionality of anything to note because, again, they use the same microprocessor. So I really like this one, and I'll show you an example of where I've used this on a project, and this will kind of help explain why I don't like them to come pre-soldered with the pin headers. This is something that I 3D printed recently, and I haven't finished the project yet. I designed this circuit board, had it produced, and then I soldered everything up on it. It's a motor driver. Turn it around here where you can see it a little bit better. It's a motor driver, and as you can see, the Arduino is actually just plugged in to some headers that I soldered on this board. So I could actually unplug this Arduino. I'm not going to do it because it fits in there really tight. But I can remove the Arduino and go program it, do whatever I need to do, and then just slide it back into these headers. So if you're paying attention, then you'll notice that I actually soldered male headers upside down on it so that I could see all the labeling from the top, and then I could just slide it down into that socket. So that's just one example of why I don't like them to come with the headers, because I never know what I'm going to do with them, and I buy them in packs of like 3 or 5. Here's the package. Yeah, the package is not still in this one, but basic in this little box here of microprocessors. But normally I'll buy like 3 or 5 at a time, and I'll just kind of have them hanging out until I need them. And I used a couple of Nanos on this one and another. I have another one of these that's identical that I built for my uncle. So again, you can use these in cool everyday projects. And this motor driver is actually going to replace the motor driver that I showed you that was in here. This is like a store-bought motor driver, and it doesn't really do that much amperage, and it's physically it's larger. And this is the reason why this box is so big is because there's actually going to be the 12-volt power supply is going to actually go in here with this board, and I'm probably going to hot glue that down. So moving on to the last type, save the best for last. This is the Pro Micro, and just to, I don't know what I do with that. Oh my gosh, what do I do with that? There it is. Just to compare it size-wise to the Nano, it's even smaller than the Nano. So again, this is Pro Micro, this is Nano. So this has a few less pins on it, but this guy, he packs a punch. And not only is it smaller, the cost is about the same as one of these. So these are about maybe $5-6 a piece if you buy them in lots of 3 or 5 from China. And this is really special because it has a human interface device built into it. So when you connect it to your USB port on your computer, it can act as a keyboard, it can act as a joystick. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with it because it actually has a different microprocessor. Instead of using the Atmega 328P, it uses the Atmega 32U4. So it's just a kind of think of it as kind of a newer, updated version of the Atmega 328P. So these are just by far my favorite because they're just so versatile. I've done some projects with these where I used every single pin on the entire thing. I made some button boxes for my sim rig, and I used every single pin connected to switches and rotary encoders and things like that. And then I wrote some code that actually makes use of. There's a joystick library for Arduino. Again, you have to have the Pro Micro or some Arduino variant that has the Atmega 328U4 in order to do this, because again, this can act as a human interface device. And I use that joystick library, and it sends joystick presses for all the different things that I have connected to it. So, and I use that on my sim rig all the time. It's just, it's really cool to actually take this stuff, and then it's one thing to play with it on a breadboard and learn, and I think that's great. But it, to me, is very, very satisfying to actually take one of these and put it to real world use. Because that just goes to show you that these things, I mean, they're not really just toys. Like, you can do some really cool, useful stuff with them. But if you don't think you're going to need the human interface device capability, then it might be worth it just to go with one of these for cost. These are actually also another thing. I don't have a breadboard here. These are a lot easier to insert into a breadboard. So if you had a breadboard, you could kind of do the same thing that I kind of did on that board I just showed you, and you could solder the pin headers upside down, and then that way, whenever you go to put it into a breadboard, it would just sit down in the breadboard, and you could see all your labels on the top, so you could hook up your DuPont connectors and play around with it a lot easier. If you have one of these guys, that's harder to do because it's so big. I mean, the breadboard would generally fit inside of here. And so you have to end up running DuPont connectors to your breadboard, and that gets really messy because next thing you know, you've got this big spider web of wires everywhere, and you can't see your project, and you bump it and you accidentally unplug one of those DuPont connectors, and it just becomes a mess to try to test anything. But if you get one of these guys and you solder those male pin headers upside down, again, you can just slide that into your breadboard, and then you can use some really short pieces of hookup wire to hook things up, so your project will be nice and clean. You can see what's going on and test everything very well that way. So, the other thing, and gosh, this is in and of itself the reason why you'd probably want to use the Pro Micro is, this one, take grab the right one. I was going to say they use USB-C, but that looks like a micro. Well, they make them both ways, and I thought this was a C, but you can, most of them that you'll see now will have a USB-C, which again, in and of itself, that's just a good reason to want to get these, because I don't know about you, but I don't need more micro USB in my life. I want to get everything to the C. That's my goal, just like everyone else. I'm trying to get to all C, and it's an uphill battle. But yeah, that's kind of the story with the three different types. I mean, there's There's other types of Arduinos out there. There's the Mega, which is it's like this, but it's just way bigger, and it's got more pins and stuff on it. But and then you'll also, I think, I meant to say this. You'll hear these Pro Micros. I think you'll hear them called a Leonardo. I think they make one this size. Well, I don't think I know. They make one this size that actually has the 32U4 microprocessor in it. So if you did want to get this in a larger package, they do have it. I've never used one, so I don't know anything about that one. And there's a few other variants out there, but I mean, these three are really just, these are they're 90% of what you're going to see. It's what most people use. And these ESP32s, that may be another video. But yeah, get yourself one of these things, or as I said, hopefully a Pro Micro or a Nano, and just play around with it. Have some fun. These things are just so much fun. Even if you're just blinking an LED, or maybe you're just driving a CPU fan, or you're using it as a weather station. I mean, there's so many boards out there for these. This is just one example. I've never used this. I forgot I even had it. I believe this does. I think this is like a humidity and temperature board that I bought at some point. I've never used them. They just happen to be in this little drawer. But yeah, these things are just so much fun. I can't recommend enough. And don't, if you're just getting overly confused on the different types and which one you should buy, just get whatever, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You're going to learn a lot more by doing than you are by studying and reading manuals and all that stuff. Okay, I'm a big fan of RTFM, but really you're going to learn so much more by getting it in your hand and plugging stuff up and playing with it. And that's actually what my brother-in-law told me when he gave me this. As I told him, I said, well, there's a lot of stuff I don't understand. I don't really understand these types of circuits and this and that. And he said, well, you learn by doing. This is, I mean, and he was right. That was like really, really good advice. You learn a lot more by getting your hands dirty and breathing some solder smoke than you do by just reading manuals and things like that. So, all right, well, that's it. I think we're going to get back to regularly scheduled programming now.